The Summer Games Minute, brought to you by Mass Mutual. For most professional athletes, versatility means they can play a few different positions in a single sport. For Babe Dietrichson-Zaharias, versatility means dominance across the entire spectrum of sport. In the 1932 Summer Games in Los Angeles, Zaharias won gold in the 80-meter hurdles and the javelin throw, plus she got a silver in the high jump. Running, throwing, jumping wasn't enough for Babe, so she became a competitive billiards player, then jumped into professional golf, winning 10 major championships, all the while making a few pitching appearances in Major League Baseball spring training games. Mass Mutual understands the nuances in how women want and need to manage their finances. With quality product solutions and guidance, a Mass Mutual financial professional can help you plan for both short-term and long-term money goals. Learn more and get started at massmutual.com.
As you've probably heard by now, we've teamed up with BetMGM this season. We'll be using BetMGM lines to make all of our picks, and we'll have special offers for our listeners each week. If you haven't signed up for BetMGM yet, use bonus code The Athletic, and you'll get a 1-year subscription to The Athletic, plus up to a $1,500 first bet offer on your first wager with BetMGM. Here's how it works. Download the BetMGM app and sign up using bonus code The Athletic. Make your first deposit of at least $10. Place your first bet on any game and claim your voucher for a 1-year subscription to The Athletic. See BetMGM.com for terms. U.S. promotional offers not available in D.C., Mississippi, New York, Nevada, Ontario, or Puerto Rico. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Available in the U.S. Call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369 in New York. Call 1-800-NEXT-STEP in Arizona. 1-800-327-5050 in Massachusetts. 1-800-BETS-OFF in Iowa. 1-800-270-7117 for confidential help in Michigan. 1-800-981-0023 in Puerto Rico. First bet offer for new customers only in partnership with Kansas Crossing Casino and Hotel. Don't forget, if you haven't signed up for BetMGM yet, use bonus code The Athletic, and you'll get a 1-year subscription to The Athletic, plus up to a $1,500 first bet offer on your first wager.
Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile. With the price of just about everything going up during inflation, we thought we'd bring our prices down. So to help us, we brought in a reverse auctioneer, which is apparently a thing.
Mint Mobile Unlimited Premium Wireless. How to get 30, 30, bit to get 30, bit to get 20, 20, 20, bit to get 20, 20, bit to get 15, 15, 15, 15, just $15 a month? Sold!
Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
$45 up front for 3 months plus taxes and fees. Promo rate for new customers for limited time. Unlimited more than 40 gigabytes per month. Slows full terms at mintmobile.com.
The Athletic.
More wings demolished than on a Friday night at KFC. Choreography fails as Strictly Jag move fall short. Rookies shine as regulars take a spa day. And it's nil points for Gunter after fluffing his lines. All this and more in the Race Formula E podcast, Berlin EPrix review. Hello, I'm Andrew Vanderberg, and joining me after setting some form of unwanted record of attending 2 FIA races over the course of a single weekend is our intrepid, broken, not jet-lagged because it was basically in the same time zone, but down to the canvas correspondent, Sam Smith. Sam, how are you?
Down to the canvas, yeah, on my head and in my soul, I think, after that. Yeah, a bit hardcore, really. I'm not going to do that again. It's way too old to do those kind of things. Leave that to the youngsters.
Just for the benefit of those listening, why? Why do both?
Well, because I fancied a double payday. Really, it's all about the money now. I'm getting old. No,
it's all about the green.
Well, I've got the FIA and Formula E and WEC to thank about that. You know, everyone writes, including me, about the drivers and the engineers. But at the end of the day, some journos get a bit screwed as well on these things. But at least it was a double header, so I could make the Sunday and saw 2 World Championship races in one weekend. But I don't recommend it, even though it was quite close. It's a bit of a zombie on Tuesday when I got back home.
It's always tricky, these double-header ones, as I've said before, because it's hard to pull out one narrative. But of all the races I've ever seen, they are 2 of the most complicated ones to pull a narrative out of. There was literally so much going on that I think I had some form of sensory overload and I really couldn't make head nor tail of ultimately what happened. So you're going to have to hold my hand a little bit through this podcast, I think.
Well, of course, I wasn't there, so I've got a decent excuse as well. So if we don't do it in great detail, then yeah. But absolute bedlam. I mean, brutal racing going on. We've talked about this peloton before. And we've talked about whether it's good or not for Formula E. I mean, the problem now is that the teams and drivers are just wise to how they're run.
Yes.
Last year, they're still finding their feet and understanding. Now, they're more or less on the same page. And with it being the second season of a stable rules set, they're all on the same energy targets. They all know where to position their cars. And there's only a certain amount of real estate, right, on the track. Yeah. I mean, that's just obvious. So the races, they aren't linear. They're sort of, they build and then they explode. And I think the first Berlin race, speaking to some of the drivers and the engineers, it surprised most of them by how quick it was actually. And I think that just added to the chaos. There were wings flying, debris all over the track. It's the Wild West out there. In fact, you know, I said to somebody, I can't remember, might have been Ollie Rowland, I said, it's like, it must be like being in a Tarantino film. Like, you just don't know what's going to happen next. There's no narrative. It's all, you know, literally Pulp Fiction out there. And it's just going off all over the place. It's no wonder that Scott Elkins and the stewards can't keep track of everything that's going on. I mean, we can't impossible. In the media.
I mean, lap charting that. Yeah. I mean, they've got to be the toughest gig going.
No, you'd have to do it through mini sectors within the lap chart, wouldn't you? Yeah. If you're a certain age. But I mean, now it's just there is multiple contacts going on at multiple corners every lap, and to try and analyse and censor and sanction that is impossible. You just cannot do it. You would have to have an army of 10, 15 people to do that in race control, and those resources just don't exist. It's like when you go to the fair when you're a kid and you go on the dodgems and there are loads of pissed up dads there and they're just smashing into the kids and taking the kids out, laughing their heads off. Yeah, maximum carnage. It's just maximum carnage. A totally different way of racing. It's just maximum carnage.
Yeah. Having set ourselves up for a fall, we are now going to attempt to work out what the hell went on. So, first things first, obviously Berlin is the only ever present on the calendar, although we did have that 1 year at Alexanderplatz, not Tempelhof. We are now on configuration 9, 10, 11, I don't know. I don't think any racetrack has ever had as many configurations as this one, and it's only been around for such a short period of time. Maybe the reprofiling the various chicanes at Monza, but it's unbelievable. So take us through the latest iteration of the Tempelhof track.
Yeah, it wasn't overly popular, quite short in nature, very different feel to it. Everything was located in a different place last week. The pits were further on beyond where the previous pits were. It was quite a quick sort of left kink into a tightish turn 2 where the attack mode was. First thing to say, it was very wide. You could get
really wide.
12 cars abreast on there. It's sort of Cleveland-esque, wasn't it, if people remember the Cleveland IndyCar track from years gone by. And then there was sort of slight technical left and right, turn 3, turn 4, then a wide open kink and a flat out run to a hairpin. Then there was a kind of another hairpin, which had a sort of kart track feel to it. And then it looped around to a double left and then another tighter left back onto the straight. I only saw it for the first time on Sunday with my own eyes. It didn't really register, honestly, that it was a totally new configuration. It was broadly in the same location.
Because it looks almost identical. Unless you overlaid one on the other, you'd be hard pushed to say.
Yeah. I don't think it looks great on TV. Luckily it was a bright sunny day, so actually being there was fine and there was no wind and it was okay. The surface obviously is exactly the same, very quirky coruscating surface, which the teams have to cope with. It produced some great racing, but ultimately it wasn't particularly the track that did that. It was a combination of that and the amount of usable energy left. So the feeling is now that the FIA are sort of deliberately teeing this up to be an ultra peloton race, or Tarantino race as I called it. It's whether it's good or not for Formula E. Sorry to come back to this, but I think this needs to be said. We've not written about it because we've said it all before, but I think for a podcast it's crucial to actually understand, well, to get across how much the vast majority of drivers do not like this type of racing. And I'm talking about probably all bar Oliver Rowland. Ollie genuinely does like it. It reminds him of cadet karting, and he's obviously revelling in it because he got a couple of great results there and did well at Misano too. Van Dorn, Freins, Buemi, Verne, Evans, Tickter and Fenestraz, they loathe it. They absolutely loathe it. But guess what? It's the same for everyone. Yeah. So there has to be an element of, shut up and get on with it. They're paid a shitload of money. I mean, get on with it.
Yeah, well, obviously there is just to get on with it, which is my default position on just about everything in life. But in terms of, if this were a function of just this track, so say every time we came to Tempelhof, we knew we were going to have one of these races. And I go back to, I still think, watching them now, they're much more like 10,000 metre running races, where you have these group of pack and someone sets the pace and you either go at that pace or you stay back. But if you don't stick enough with the lead group, you're too far back. No matter how much energy you've conserved, you'll never catch it all up. And then it all depends when you go for the bell, or do you do it 600 metres or that. If you watch the races play out, it will be very similar to the 10,000 metres final at the Olympics this year, unless whoever the world record setting Kenyan is at the moment just sort of nails it from the get-go and the others can't keep up. But it's much more that sort of racing. If that was just limited to this track, I think that'd be cool. I love things having their own identity and being a bit different like that. But if it's going to be the majority of the series, I'm not sure. Like I said, I find it almost impossible to follow because you just can't concentrate on that many things at once.
Yeah, that's true. And the evidence is there in terms of Nick Cassidy winning that Saturday race. With 6 laps to go, he was 13th.
Yeah.
He was at the back of the grid. He's conserving energy, and he came through knowing it was easy to come through. Most of those aren't overtakes, right? The last 5 minutes are where the overtakes
they're not
happen.
Genuine overtakes.
They're just passes, tactical passes. But Nick Cassidy did a great job. Now, isn't it interesting that every driver I speak to says, "Oh, there's just so much element of chance, and it's just it's just such a casino in terms of where you place your car." That is true, and drivers, they instinctively know where to place their car here. Some better than others. Nick Cassidy, Oliver Rowland, Verne to some extent, even though he really, really hates this type of racing, they do know how to do that. Some other drivers don't, right? I mean, Stoffel Van Dorn is an example of that. He looks
a bit at sea, doesn't he?
He's just not cut out for this type of racing. And when he does get his elbows out, he almost overcompensates and ends up hitting someone, which he did on the Sunday. I think the problem for me isn't so much that we have one or two of these. It's now Shanghai is highly likely to be similar, and Portland for sure will be probably even nuttier, as we saw last year. The big fundamental for me is with wings flying off and debris and the wings susceptible to going underneath the wheels, a la Nico Muller at Portland last year. Portland doesn't have the wide open spaces of Berlin. If you leave the track, you're in grass and gravel, there's barriers, there's debris fencing, there's concrete walls. I think there's a real danger actually of a big shunt happening. I've said it before, and I'm just not been a sort of doom monger on this. I genuinely think there could be a really horrible shunt. We saw what almost happened with Cassidy and Sam Bird at Misano, and that wasn't even in the race. In some areas, it's I flinch a bit and I see these things going on, and I just think one day there's going to be a plane crash, and it absolutely will happen if these races continue at this level of lift and coast and manoeuvring your car. And Formula E and the FIA then can't turn around and say, well, we didn't see that coming, because there's been dozens of near misses in the past, the most terrifying of which was Jean-Eric Verne at Portland last year, when he was about 20 centimetres away from launching God knows where after missing Mortara with a speed differential of about 60, 70 miles an hour. I mean, that is just not a safe way to go motor racing.
Yeah, well, it's what it is for the moment. Let's see what the next Evo of cars brings. One thing's for sure, it looks at least like we won't get through quite as many front wings, but that's a business to be in, isn't it? supplying front wings to Formula E at the moment. It's like
Spark moving to Switzerland soon or something, aren't they? They got a
Christmas
base in,
party's going to be a hell of an event.
yeah, Christmas party in Bermuda for the Spark staff. I mean, great. I could almost hear their cash register going off in the pits. I mean, it's just extraordinary. The amount
78, right?
Yeah.
Over the course of the weekend, 78 front wings.
Yeah, no, I just made that up. I don't know if that's fact or not. That's what it felt like. I don't think it'd be that many, but
I believe you.
I'm
there you absolutely
go. Well,
convinced
obviously we do over egg the pudding quite a lot, as well as eating it.
Let's stick with 78 because it's a good number.
Good round number, isn't it? Let's stick with that. No, I mean it felt like that. I wouldn't be surprised if it wasn't something approaching that. I mean, it was just. I don't think there were many cars untouched, in that race that hadn't suffered damage. Rowland finished P3. Was he P3 on Sunday? Can't remember now. P2, P3.
He was P3 on.
He was P3. Sorry, wasn't he? Because Cassidy was P2. So his wing was completely just hanging on by a thread most of it, and he managed to survive. But it's a miracle. I mean, several. Gunter had one go under his wheels and straight into the wall. Verline had multiple contacts and bits hanging off it. It is,
and that's on the serious point because we spoke about this in the last podcast. A number of wrist injuries that we've seen here, and when wings are going under front wheels. And you're unable to do anything about it and you're careering head on into the barrier, even if you've got the brakes full on 60 miles an hour, whatever, that's a decent hit, right? And that's when wrists and thumbs and things like that can get broken.
Yep. And Gunter was quite lucky. My colleague Alice Holloway was on his radio actually when he crashed, and for a good minute or so it didn't sound good. It sounded as though he was in a lot of pain and that he might be the latest casualty. Deruvela in the media pens, his hand was bleeding and had a big cut on it.
Oh wow.
And we ran a story just before Berlin about how the FIA is now seriously looking into this and has been for a while, to be fair to them. And we understand that at London they will be using, or they will be trialling, some gloves from OMP and Alpine Stars with the carbon or plastic inserts in the back to try and protect the hands a bit more. And I think that the safety foam, which wasn't mandatory, will shortly be so. So I think they're putting in provisions to try and limit these injuries. And obviously Sam Bird, we hope, is recovered for Shanghai next week, and the signs are good. He's in the sim today actually as we record this, and I think Sam will be back for Shanghai. So but it's not ideal. There's a lot of jeopardy in races, things flying around. I mean, again, there's a couple of drivers told me that they had massive pieces of carbon clonking them on the head, and some bits coming into the cockpit, and I mean it's just demolition derby stuff, isn't it? I think there has to be a happy medium here. But then the bigger question, speaking to Lucas Di Grassi last week, the bigger question is, well, we're all a little bit embedded in racing, aren't we? We're a little bit traditionalist, we're a bit purist, and we probably don't realise it so much. Is this something which will actually ignite Formula E and take it to places where other motorsport disciplines won't, for new generations and new fans coming into the series? There is something to be said about that. So, if this hooks a load of kids into the crash bang wallop nature of motorsport sometimes, then who knows? It could actually be a decent promotional tool in the long run, but it has to be.
Yeah, without mission to be a miserable old cynic about that, I'd love to see some data to prove that's the case, because I'm not having it otherwise.
Well, we can go to Formula E's data department, which is so reliable on numbers and figures. So yeah, we'll get all that, won't we?
We love talking stats here at The Athletic. Here's one that's super simple to remember. Discover automatically doubles the cash back you've earned on your credit card at the end of your first year with Cashback Match. That means with Discover, you could turn $150 cash back to $300. That's right. You could put it towards some memorabilia you've had your eye on, or treat yourself to a premium sports network. You earn and Discover doubles. See terms at discover.com/creditcard.
We'll get back to the pod in a moment, but first of all, let me tell you about Grammarly. Email, Google Docs, Slack, you write across multiple platforms and places during your workday, so delivering consistent, high-quality communication everywhere is key. Grammarly is an AI writing partner that helps you get work done faster with high-quality writing for better projects, proposals, presentations, and more. Best of all, Grammarly works where you work, so you can get more done no matter what tools you use. As a journalist and podcast host, I'm constantly writing and rewriting copy and drawing up scripts. It's part of the job, and Grammarly helps make it faster. It's got some really cool features like tone suggestions to help you strike the right balance between direct and friendly in work emails. Plus, Grammarly has a ton of other great features like advanced spelling, grammar, punctuation, and conciseness suggestions to ensure your writing is professional, mistake-free, and clear. Get AI writing support that works where you work. Sign up and download for free at grammarly.com/podcast. That's GRAMMARLY.com/podcast. Easier said, done.
Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile. With the price of just about everything going up during inflation, we thought we'd bring our prices down. So to help us, we brought in a reverse auctioneer, which is apparently a thing.
Mint Mobile Unlimited Premium Wireless. How to get 30, 30, bit to get 30, bit to get 20, 20, 20, bit to get 20, 20, bit to get 15, 15, 15, 15, just $15 a month? Sold!
Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
$45 up front for 3 months plus taxes and fees. Promo rate for new customers for limited time. Unlimited more than 40 gigabytes per month. Slows full terms at mintmobile.com.
Right. So race 1, Cassidy comes from nowhere to win. Race 2, Antonio Felix da Costa finally gets a win that he's allowed to keep. In a similar sort of fashion again, it was one of those ones where he timed his sort of sprint to the line to perfection.
Yeah, he did a fantastic job, actually. Came through. He was always in that top bunch, fighting tooth and nail with Rowland, with his teammate Pascal Wehrlein, with the two Jaguars, and just got it done. He's racecraft wise, I don't think anyone disputes that he's one of the best, and always has been. The questions since last year have been his qualifying performance, one lap, but of course that didn't matter at Berlin. You might as well not have bothered starting qualifying. There was just no point. You could
start from the pit lane.
I mean, there wasn't.
Save your front wing in turn 1.
Yeah, the 3 points was the only thing relevant really for that session, and it was super interesting because, as we have chronicled in great detail, Antonio Felix da Costa's season has been complicated on and off the track. The nadir of it was obviously Riyadh, and we had a good chat actually on the way back from the pits, and let's pick up this conversation after we've heard this from Antonio. So we're walking back to the pits here from the media pen. There's a few interruptions by well-wishers, but it's worth listening to this as he rationalises mainly how he felt after Misano, and just really giving an insight into the difficulties that he's had even within his own team so far this season.
Honestly, if we exclude the first 3 races of the year and we count that Misano win, I don't think I'll be far off the leaders now, you know. I just had that one retirement in Misano, and all the other races I finished in the top 6, all of them. So, if counts for nothing, but definitely when I start my year next year, I'm gonna have different considerations on a few things.
But you compartmentalised Misano really well. I mean, publicly, but was it a different thing under the skin?
I won that race, man. Honestly, when even the FIA on their official note release, whatever, on their official disqualifying note, they say that the part has no performance advantage. I won that race, so just sucks that I lose my prize money and my points, but. In my mind, I won that race, so life goes on. I'm getting married at the end of the year, and I'm growing up, and I have other things to worry about sometimes.
You're growing up. You're 33. Come on.
I'm old. That's what I'm.
Final one, Antonio. In terms of the championship, funnier things have happened, weirder things have happened. Second half of the season.
Yeah.
How you? Well, on one hand. Sorry to go back to Misano, but if you end up putting some results together and getting in contention, all of a sudden those 25 points that you earned, probably by right, look even more contentious, don't they?
Yeah, I'm not really counting on them right now, but absolutely, they would make a big difference. And they're more than 25 points, because I gain 25, but you take points away from others. So it's actually, let's say, 27, 28, 30 points even. So, yeah, it is what it is, man. Again, when I'm at the sim, I do my job. When I'm at the races, I focus only on this. When I'm home, yeah, I don't know. I try not to get angry about bad situations anymore.
Yeah. Just a final one on what happened at the start of the season in terms of some people doubting you. Is that a bit of a lack of respect? You're a champion. You won multiple EPrix. You're somebody who's got the respect of all your peers in the championship. Was it a bit disappointing that people, kind of talked about you as a top 10 or top 6 driver without thinking you could pull these races off?
I'm not going to lie, and I'm not. I don't know what word to use, but it wasn't nice. Let's put it like that. And a team pulls together when times are tough, not when you win. Now it's easy when you win, and that's what I would have liked to see a little bit more. But it is what it is. What it is. It's where we are, and man, we're in the world of sports where if you don't perform, things can change. And is it nice? No, but it is what it is.
Yeah.
He's a great guy, isn't he, Antonio? This sort of resurgence in form, is this enough to keep him at Porsche, to turn the tide on what appeared to be a bit of a broken relationship there?
Well, that's the big question now, isn't it? It's a huge question. My feelings on it are quite complex, knowing a bit about how things have panned out there. I mean, how do you look at it? On one level, do you look at it as, yes, he was underperforming and he had an absolute stinker in Riyadh, and Mexico wasn't fantastic either. And last year, the form was inconsistent. So then if you're managing that, if you're Thomas Laudenbach or Florian Modlinger or other senior figures within that Porsche lineup, how do you address that? Do you, knowing the character that Antonio is, do you put an arm around him and say, look, we're with you, we're supporting you, which I'm sure they did, but at the same time, it feels like and seems like there was something else going on. There was somebody reaching round the back and maybe, giving him a poke and testing his patience. Let's say with testing Nico Muller. Testing his patience by testing Nico Muller is a good way to put it. And I just think, is that the way to manage Antonio Felix da Costa? Actually, any driver? I don't know. But look, it's their team. They run it how they want. And they seem to have done so in a way which is quite brutal, very analytical, no grey areas, just black and white, data. And if that's the way they run their team, that's their business. But when you have somebody who's quite emotional and not temperamental, because Antonio's not that, but he's quite a passionate guy about his craft, that can grate, and that's what's happened here. Now, the big question now is, can some of the relationships there between management and Antonio be stitched back together, and can they fuse back to something where they understand each other better? The latest I've got is that there is a good chance that will happen and that Porsche will be unchanged next season, which I think if you look at the results and you look at where they are in the championship and you look at the performances, is 100% the right way to go. I don't think anyone's disputing that. But it's going to take some more healing, and it's going to take an understanding between them to thrash this out and get a healthier relationship behind the scenes, because it was, I would say, between Riyadh and possibly Tokyo, it looked as though it was over. It just looked like there was no way to come back from that. And even at Berlin, after Antonio won, I spoke to Florian Modlinger, and he waxed lyrical about Antonio's race and his racecraft and the way that he performed and what he could do in races, but then couldn't resist then also saying, but, qualifying, there's still there's still a question about his qualifying. I was like, and I sort of interjected and I said, qualifying doesn't matter around here, Florian. And and then we talked about, well, it will do in London. So if you look at, as Antonio said in that piece when we spoke together, if you look at those 25 points of Misano, and then you adjust the points that others scored, he could be in the title fight if he had those 25 points, and he would then possibly be going to London, and the pressure would be on qualifying. So that's the kind of thought process that the management at Porsche are at. If you ask me now, I would say Antonio Felix da Costa will stay at Porsche next year.
Oh, interesting.
And I wouldn't have said that a month ago or 2 months ago. Absolutely not. I just feel that I don't think it's. I think that certain things might need to change in and around the team and their philosophy a little bit. But look, they're all learning from it, and it's essentially a bit of a culture clash, I think, at the end of the day. And Antonio again touched on that in the interview. So, winning has a funny habit, doesn't it, of making things all right? And I think this will help the process a great deal.
All this, you're only as good as your last race, sort of stuff. There is a element of truth in it. So
indeed.
Let's see. Talking of being only as good as your last race, you wrote him out of the championship contention in our last pod. Two third places, 2 podiums for Ollie Rowland. You say he loves this sort of racing, and he is very good at it. Third in the points, still writing him off?
Yeah, there wasn't much Yorkshire solidarity, was there from me? Well, he's not proper Yorkshire anyway, South Yorkshire, not North, so we'll pick that up in the paddock, Ollie. No, so yeah, another exceptional weekend for Oliver Rowland and Nissan. Yeah, I mean, what can you say? I think he's got 6 podiums this year. I mean, we did say, didn't we, before the season, he could have a very, very strong campaign, and he will be good. I don't think anyone appreciated that things would go this good, and at least of all Oliver himself. I'm sure he's absolutely and rightfully cock a hoop with the way that things are going. A lot of these races, particularly Misano and this race, he's been just fantastic, very, very aggressive, very astute in the way that he goes for it and where he goes. He started those 2 races at the weekend 16th and 15th on the grid.
Yeah,
and he ends
back to
up,
your point that qualifying didn't matter.
Yeah. But, you've got to make your way. And consistently, he's been extremely good at those. But even the races where he's not qualified that well on, let's call them, not sprint races, but less energy-sensitive races, like Monaco, for instance, he started way off the top 10, and he ended up finishing in 6th, I think it was, 5th or 6th. But he's just in that vein of form at the minute, and you can match him up against one of last year's standout performers as a rookie, Sacha Fenestraz, and Fenestraz is just nowhere near Oliver. Just can't get anywhere near him.
Struggling in comparison, isn't
it? Yeah. And now the question marks are not on Norman Nato as it was last year as his teammate. The question marks are on Sacha Fenestraz. Why isn't he matching at least or closer to Oliver Rowland? So there's pressure from that side of things with Fenestraz, and that's because Oliver Rowland is performing extremely well, and he is just in a very, very good place at the moment. And when you look at the points, yes, we did say that he probably wouldn't be in genuine contention. Sorry, I said.
I think I said he was still a factor.
Yeah, 22 points.
And if Shanghai is, as you say, it's going to be another one of these type of races, he coming out of that, he should still be right in the mix.
Yeah. Well, I'm gonna swallow it. I'm gonna full mea culpa apology. It's getting a regular thing now, isn't it, after the Maserati shambles? But Oliver Rowland absolutely is.
We'll talk about them in a minute.
When you look at where he is in the championship, and you look at the races coming up, yeah, he's certainly in the midst of it. And you would say now, actually, if you're talking about a gang of 4 in the championship, you might have to get Mitch Evans to drop out of it. Who knows? I mean, he's 43 points in arrears of Cassidy, but we're talking about how many? We've got 3 double headers, so we're talking about what's that? About 170 points or approximately up for grabs.
There are a ton of points. I mean, mathematically, everyone can still win the championship.
Yeah. So it's going to be one of those seasons where it's just too early to call, and I think heading into the final doubleheader in London, it'll probably whittle down to 2 or 3, realistically. But you wouldn't want to pick a champion yet, even though Nick Cassidy is he's really illustrating all the attributes of a future world champion right now with Jaguar.
Yes, that's a great segue. A first and a second, 2 fastest laps. That's a really strong points haul there. In contrast, Mitch Evans in the second Jag, a 4th and a 6th, being 43 points behind your teammate. That is a lot to catch up, isn't it? Without there being, I mean, that's basically 2 DNFs or 2 0 scores. I mean, I don't see Cassidy not scoring without a DNF. And not in contrast to how well Jag choreography worked in Monaco, didn't really play out to, certainly not to Mitch's benefit in Berlin.
No, it didn't quite work the same way, did it? And it was much more challenging to try and do that sort of thing. DS and Porsche, and to some extent Andretti in the second race on Sunday, were in close proximity and tried to do that. What really scuppered Mitch was taking that late second attack. Actually a combination of leaving it so late, and the other thing was a couple of mistakes from Mitch on the brakes heading into the hairpin. One which, for one awful moment, I thought he was going to collect his own teammate, a la Bird and Evans at Hyderabad, but it didn't happen. But it did cost him. That allowed I think Jake Dennis to get past him. I think at that stage, Mitch may have been expecting a bit more of not assistance, but a little bit more clarity on where things stood going into those last few laps on Sunday, and they didn't come. And I think he was, he was. When Mitch Evans is pissed off, about it. He speaks his mind, which is a great thing. But he was a little not. When your parents were not angry, they were disappointed. It was all the worse when you were a kid. That's what it felt like with Mitch Evans. He just felt disappointed, and I think. I'm not sure that some of the messages that came across via Nick Cassidy might have, in those last few laps, might not necessarily have been adhered to as clearly as they have been in previous races. We did say, didn't we, in the last race, nearer the end of the season, that at least one glove might come off. I think sort of one was slightly dislodged on this occasion. They didn't have contact. It was close. And it was always going to be close just by the nature of these races and the real fine margins of trying to get teammates into positions where they race fairly and think about the bigger picture for their teams. Ultimately, they got a load of points, did Jaguar. Yeah. They actually scored during the whole doubleheader the third biggest ever points haul in Formula E history in a doubleheader.
Was it really?
Yeah, which I thought was... If you bear with me a second, I can tell you the exact stats.
Well, while you're doing that, they're 53 points ahead of Porsche in the team's championship now. This is a solid position. I mean, they're almost 100 ahead of Nissan in third. This is a really solid campaign, as we would expect from arguably the best driver lineup on the grid.
We always knew they were going to be strong this year, and so it's proved. And I think the harmony that we saw in Monaco wasn't as complete as it was after Berlin, but they still got these big points. And meanwhile, I found my stats. So DS Techeetah in Berlin, in that 6 races they did in August 2020, when I think
the never-ending.
Yeah, I think a lot of them got Stockholm syndrome during that August.
Some people have never recovered from that.
The second doubleheader, they scored 79 points. Audi a second on 78 points after the New York City doubleheader in 2018, which I've got zero memory of, and Jaguar Berlin in 2024, 65 points. Thanks to Alice Holloway, by the way, for doing that. I just couldn't be arsed doing those stats.
Well done, Alice.
So she did them.
Doing the dirty work for us.
There you go. Yeah. So quite a very good weekend, but at the end, it makes it all the sweeter, doesn't it, when both drivers are arm in arm and they're celebrating, they're both satisfied. There was only one Kiwi that was completely satisfied leaving Berlin. Mitch Evans wasn't in a big party frame of mind, let's put it that way.
So this weekend, there's a massive heavyweight boxing fight between Usyk and Fury. I wonder if on the undercard they're going to be putting Pascal Wehrlein and Jake Dennis, because those two really need to get in a ring and sort this out, because they are unable to share the same bit of tarmac together, aren't they?
Seemingly, yeah. It goes back to Riyadh in 21 when Wehrlein introduced Jake Dennis to the ways of Formula E by creaming him into the wall at turn 8, I think it was, and ended his race. They do rub each other up the wrong way, and usually there's a wall involved, curbs and walls. They don't give any margin at all, those two, and however many times they swap messages on their little private WhatsApp group that they have, or when they go for coffee occasionally with the other team members, and it's all... I mean, the great irony of this, of course, was that just 3 days before, Andretti and Porsche announced the continuation of their partnership for another 2 years, and everything was fine, and we sorted it all out. We sorted the kids don't fight anymore. They're all growing up now, and they play nicely together. Forget it. That's never going to happen. You may as well just not bother. Just let them get on with it. But of course, when you do, it could end up costing Porsche and Andretti some big points. But I think that there's a genuine clash of characters there, a clash of racing ethics. I just don't think they see battling together on track the same way. I think it's just a fundamental thing like that, and I just don't think they ever will. And what it does is it creates a bit of paranoia. So when they are on the same bit of real estate, that paranoia and that uncertainty and suspicion creeps in, and that's exactly what happened lap after lap at Berlin. And frankly, I'm amazed that both of them finished that race on Sunday. There was so much interlocking of tyres, so much nudges, so much brake testing. I mean, it's a miracle they both got to the finish, but they did.
But that's all fine so long as it's not hurting them. But can the case be made now that this is damaging possibly both of their title hopes?
Yeah, I think it can. I think it definitely can. And I believe that the team choreography element in Shanghai and Portland will be vital, absolutely vital. And even in London, where we saw last year with the Porsche Andretti flare-up, which had its roots in exactly what we're talking about, that could easily happen in London, where qualifying is so important. And then in the races, if somebody needs points and needs the help of others within the family or the extended family, then you have to play ball. The thing is with Formula E races, whether they be flat out or just fairly regular races like Monaco or even London, where it's just a completely flat out race, trying to cover off multiple scenarios and multiple orchestrations and choreographed moves and what if this happens, it's just impossible. You're talking about thousands of permutations. You've got to make the calls have to be clear from the get-go. I mean, you can't make a complete dog's dinner of it like Envision did with Buemi and Cassidy, which was just a dreadful, abject performance from a team. You have to go with the flow a bit and almost just simplify things in your head about what you want to achieve and not overcomplicate it. I mean, it's easy for us to say, but honestly, even on wide open spaces like Berlin, if Pascal Wehrlein and Jake Dennis can do that in Berlin, imagine what they could achieve at London. I mean, it doesn't bear thinking about, does it really? I mean, it's... And
it's highly likely that one, maybe even both of them, will be fighting for the championship then.
Yeah.
I mean, that's going to be explosive.
Yeah, if they're in the mix. And like you say, there could be beneficiaries. Nick Cassidy, by that stage, if the way it's going, and I asked Mitch Evans about his title aspirations, and he's still being positive about it.
As he should be,
As he should be, of course. And he's more than capable of getting double-header wins. He's proved it in the past, and no doubt he'll do it again. But Pascal Wehrlein, if you've got plutonium and uranium and you mix it, which is with those two, you're going to get a highly explosive situation, and there just doesn't seem any possibility of reining them in. I'm not saying that's a weak team management or anything of that sort. I just think it's one of those rare cases. Do you remember? And again, this is going to our older listeners. Do you remember Martin Brundle and Jean Alesi in the mid-90s? It's like every third race they would twat each other.
Yes.
Somewhere along the racetrack.
They just had this sort of a bit like Massa and Hamilton in 2009, where they just always seemed to be on the same bit of racetrack together.
Yeah, and it's funny because I travelled over with Nico Muller amongst others to Berlin, and we were talking about exactly the same thing. And his drive, I won't name it because it's not fair because it's a private conversation, but there is one driver, sports car driver, that Nico Muller always has shunts with, and he gets on perfectly well with him away from the track. They don't hate each other.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying Jake Dennis and Pascal Wehrlein hate each other away from the track. It's just something on any given corner or any part of a track that they just end up running into each other. And like I said, it then gets a bit psychological, because then you get paranoid about it, and you think, well, I really hate him. I hate the way he drives. I just don't like his ethics, so I'm going to teach him a lesson, or I'm going to match brawn with brawn, in terms of just giving him a nudge here and there, and that's how it escalates. And I'm pretty confident that's what happens with Dennis and Verline.
Well, it makes for great TV. Also, race 1, I think Dennis basically started last. Race 2 on pole. I mean, that's a hell of a turnaround in 24 hours. What happened there?
Well, having said all that about Porsche and Andretti, they actually work really well together technically, and in some operation elements, and just the whole round package of the customer manufacturer relationship. And this is a great example of it, because they were back of the grid. They were John Watson and Niki Lauda at Long Beach in 1983, and then they turned it around by working together with Porsche and working on some of the systems and how to harness the systems more, copying, or maybe not copying, but being informed by what Verline and Costa were doing the previous day, and they tried it in qualifying, and it worked. They ended up qualifying on pole with Dennis and third with Nato, and I mean, that should have given them a really good shot at the race win and getting a double podium. It just didn't quite happen because of what we talked about with getting sucked into fights that they probably shouldn't have been fighting so hard for. And then obviously Nato had his slightly how would you put it, ambitious move on Sacha Fenestraz, and that effectively ended both their races. So it's a bit of a mess. And Norman got a sarcastic hand clap, didn't he, from Fenestraz on that occasion, and probably deserved it a bit.
Worth mentioning, Jev getting second place in that first race sort of keeps his solid season ticking along. In contrast, despite going well in qualifying, it's not really working for Van Dorn in the races. Any signs of a bit of pressure creeping in there?
Yes, I think there is. I think there's been a lot of patience with that side of the garage with DS Penske. And the first thing to say is that Van Dorn had a fantastic Monaco, really good race at Monaco, finished third, and you thought, right, this is it.
He's still a quality driver.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. It is and always will be. The thing is with Stoffel Van Dorn and this type of racing, it's just the anti-Van Dorn way of racing. I think he is the driver who probably suffers the most because it's not in his nature. And I'm not saying he's somebody who shirks away from confrontation, because he can race as hard as the rest of them. But the way that Stoffel Van Dorn goes racing, this is complete anathema to him in terms of, shunting people out the way and sticking his nose against somebody's gearbox or tactical contact or whatever you want. He's a very firm, hard, but as far as I'm concerned, always fair racer. You can count on one hand the amount of accidents that Stoffel Van Dorn has been involved in the last 6 years. Not many at all. So he really struggles with this type of racing. And then I get the feeling that when he just goes, oh, well, it's the same for everybody, I'm going to get stuck in, he kind of almost overcompensates for it. So he gets out of position. He did do in Sunday, was having a decent race and would have got some points. And then, just made a mistake in placing his car and getting shuffled out, and ended up hitting the back of somebody and damaging his car and having to come in for a new nose, and that was it. So pressure. Yeah, I think there's a bigger picture with this in terms of what might happen next year with the driver market. But I wouldn't be totally confident that Stoffel Van Dorn will be in black and gold or at that team next year. But there's a lot of things happening there at the minute that will. I think what we should do, VW, is that we should revisit the driver market maybe for the post-Shanghai one, because I think
let's do that.
A lot of
stuck into that.
Yeah, it's
a bit of speculation.
It really kicked off at Monaco with the phase 1, and then at phase 2 at Berlin, every corner, every dodgy, quiet, dark corner of the paddock I turned, there was a driver manager I'd bump into and give him a look.
You love all that.
Oh yeah,
scurried away behind the bin.
Give little nod and a wink to the driver managers, and They never tell you anything anyway. They always keep it zipped. But you know,
well, they tell you what they want you to know.
Bit of body language analysis, and seeing where they were visiting during their paddock walks was quite memorable. And it's happening, and there's a lot going on at the minute. But we'll put it into the master computer and see what it churns out next time.
Talking of the fluctuations of form and the Formula E's ebb and flow, after a fabulous pair of results in Tokyo and Misano, the wheels have really fallen off of Maxi Gunter's season, and 2 DNFs, so nil points, as I said in the allusion to Eurovision. I couldn't work out how to get a Northern Lights pun in there, but I'm sure if I'd given myself another day or two, I probably could have worked one out. But anyway, a poor series of results for him. Meanwhile, a season best for Daruvla, despite his bloodied hand in the other MSG Maserati.
Yeah, the wheels fell off literally for Gunter, and it was a shame actually, because I think he, in another dimension, he could have come away from Berlin, his home race. I think his third consecutive home race. We talked
all the home
about
races.
it, yeah. It could have been a different story. He could have got a hatful of points, I think. But was on the rough end of some of the rough house tactics going on, of course, of which he was fully engrossed. Bit unlucky in one of them. I think the Saturday when his wing came off and he went straight into the wall. No points. I think we said last time, didn't we? We didn't really see him as a title contender, and I think
certainly not now.
It.
I mean, you have to take mathematical probability to the nth degree.
Yeah, the performances and the speed is still there, and from where they were this time, well, not this time last year, but pre-season, I think they'll be quietly happy. Cyril Blay was announced as the deputy team principal. I think he's got about. He's like the Dennis Waterman of Formula E. He's like the. That's going to take some explaining, but
I'm not even sure where we start with that.
No, that's not. Those who know, as they say. But he seems to do everything in that team, which of course he doesn't, because he manages a great team of people there and does obviously delegate a lot. But he's Max Gunter's engineer. He's the all-seeing eye over the engineering team, and now he's deputy team principal. That team is in advanced discussions about a sale. We're going to have some news on this very soon about what's going on at Maserati.
That's
the
been
MSG
sort of
element.
Creeping along the news agenda basically since the start of the season, hasn't it?
Yeah, I think there'll be some news coming before the end of the season about a different looking MSG entity for next season. But we'll keep it at that at the moment. There is, but as far as we know, Max Gunter will be there as a driver next year. I think he's sorted for 25. Jan Daruvla did a really good job last weekend. Had an accident in Saturdays, as everyone did, but he came off pretty badly from that. But on Sunday, had a really good stealthy march up through the grid to 7th position, and his best result. So a confidence booster for Daruvla there. So we said, didn't we, pre-season it would be second half of the season we might see the best of him, and that's sort of going to script as we speak.
So ever since we first raced at Tempelhof, that unique surface in there has really been a joker in a pack and caused some incredibly random results. But even that Trulli pole aside, I don't think was as random as Edo Mortara sticking the Mahindra on pole and getting their first points of the season ahead of the Saturday race. How?
Yeah, well, I mean, we've seen little flashes, haven't we, this season? They have been making progress. A lot of hard work has gone on there this year, and they've not been rewarded for it, and they've not highlighted how much work they've done through results. And going over the nil point situation again, they went into Berlin the second half of the season with nothing on the board. They got their first points with that pole position. Edoardo Mortara, over one flying lap, if he's got a decent package beneath him, is very potent indeed. We see it year in, year out. I mean, he's extremely quick, and he hustled that thing around Berlin Tempelhof and got those 3 points. Completely meritorious, and a nice thing to see, actually, because I think the entire paddock felt for he and the Mahindra team after Tokyo, when they had a fighting 6th place taken away from them for an overpower, I think it was, wasn't it? A spike after that race. So they kind of were owed one in a sense, but he did it in a pretty spectacular way. That Mahindra has come on significantly. We've seen it mostly this season, really, through points and performances through Apps Cupra.
Yes.
But on this occasion, it was Mortara, and they fully deserved it. In the race, I think there was always the sense that, you know, even getting close to the podium might be tricky. It was a tough race for Mortara, and he ended up getting a few points at the end of the day. I mean, he got 8th. Was it 8th? Yes, he finished 8th, didn't he, on Saturday, which I think was probably about the maximum that he could do in the circumstances.
Oh, I think he did really well to hold on to the top 10 place.
Yeah, and it's like ERT as well, isn't it? I mean, the maximum they're ever going to get, really, unless there's a hugely, there's a hugely peculiar anomaly in the race or attrition, which there was in Misano for Tictum to get that 4th. You're talking 7th, 6th, 7th, 8th at the very best, and that's what Mortara did. So yeah, fair play to them. It's a sort of a treading water season for them, isn't it? You know, Nick de Vries and Edo Mortara will be there again next season. This is a long-term thing, and they've got an entirely new package for next season, and that's when not the pressure, but that's when the expectation will start next year for them to get into the bigger point scoring positions.
Mentioned earlier on that Sam Bird will probably be fit again for the next race at Shanghai, but his stand-in, Taylor Barnard, fabulous job. 2 points finishes ahead of his teammate Jake Hughes in both races. He's got to be on a few people's shopping lists when we get round to doing this driver market for next year. He really made a really solid impression in his limited outings.
I wrote an article about him pre-season, so I think after the Valencia test, so maybe start the season January, and we used the headline saying, you know, is this Formula E's Kimi Räikkönen moment? And I got lambasted in some quarters for that.
Well, rightly so.
Somebody openly laughed in my face at Mexico. I'm trying to think who it was. Yeah,
even that's a bit cruel, I would say. Taking it one step too far.
Yeah, they did. They were, what are you on about? You know, this kid's not even doing anything in Formula 3 last season or whatever. And I was like, well, hang on a minute. You know, the point being is that Formula 1. Generally, I think most people think that some fresh blood is needed in Formula E, and you know, we can go on to talk about some of the.
There are a lot of people who've done, you know, 7, 8, 9 seasons worth now, and maybe their time might have come. Yeah, for lots of reasons, and I just think Taylor Barnard, speaking to the team, guys like Gary Paffett and Ian James, they held him in high regard, and he topped the times in the Misano test a few weeks ago, and then he got that opportunity at Monaco, and although he didn't score points, he got to the end of that race with an untouched car, and having overtaken Sebastian Buemi around the outside of the hairpin, sorry, and then he gets station hairpin,
and then he gets a 10th and he gets an 8th in his second and third races in a car and a team that actually, you know, I think it's fair to say is underachieved this season and did do in the second half of last season. And I think that's quite remarkable that he has done that, and he put a couple of great moves on some big names in that race. I think the one around the outside of, was it Jake Dennis? It was Jake Dennis. Jake got sort of shuffled out by, hey, guess who? Pascal Wehrlein.
Was it really?
Yeah. And Barnard goes around the outside and takes him. At one stage, he's 7th and sniffing 5th and 6th. And you're thinking, wow, you know, this is seriously impressive. It may well be his last race for a while, because I think Sam Bird's probably going to be back for Shanghai. But that doesn't matter. He has done enough there to get the attention of everybody in the paddock. And I think if McLaren keep hold of him, which I'm sure they will, and I think from what I hear, they're trying to integrate him further into the McLaren family rather than just a sort of reserve driver, let's say, then I think it's been a pretty positive month for Taylor Bernard in terms of what he wants to achieve in his career in a world championship. He's going to concentrate on his Formula 2 program, of course he is, with PHM going forward, but the more that he absorbs through Neon McLaren in Formula E, I think the more, from a confidence point of view, I just think he will take a lot from those 3 races, and it will do the world of good for he and his future prospects in Formula E.
There are a few other stand-ins that we really ought to mention, top of which I go Joel Eriksson, getting a couple of points for Envision. It's a solid outing. Obviously not a Formula E first-timer, but dropping in like that. And in a team that, talk about underperforming, they're probably at the top of the list of that at the minute. Solid.
Yeah, I thought he did a really good job, actually. Was unfortunate he broke his suspension. I think tagged a curb or a wall in the first race, and then he got a couple of points for 9th on Sunday with a good run, quite astute run. Was aggressive when he needed to be. Paul Aaron was very, very impressive as well.
I wanted to introduce him as a Breaking Bad star, Aaron Paul, making an unlikely debut.
I was going to come out with a catchphrase from Jesse then, but I thought no, because Johnny would be working overtime on the bleeper machine. It wouldn't sound good. So yeah, they both did a great job actually, coming in at the relatively last minute. Ericsson's got experience of that Jaguar, of course, more so than Aaron, who is I think second currently in the F2 Championship. I think nothing was expected of them, no pressure on them, and that was probably a good place to be in the sort of the white heat of Formula E races. I think it was a bit of a shock to the system for Aaron, just how, what it was like inside the asylum. And I thought they did extremely well, and I think they've got good prospects for future possibilities in Formula E. And I think that, as well as what we saw in the rookie test, there are probably 8 to 10 drivers, them included. I'm not including Ericsson because obviously he's not a rookie. But certainly there seems to be a good layer, good strata of rookies and young drivers who... So
go on then, take us through the rookie test. Who was the interesting names and the ones to watch that came out of that?
Yeah, Robert Schwartzman was quickest for DS Penske. I mean, he's not a rookie.
He's been sniffing around Effie for a while now. Someone's going to take a punt on him, aren't they?
He's done a few tests for DS Penske, and I think he's impressed them a great deal. He could have a future in Formula E, absolutely, no doubt about it. The one who really impressed for me was Jack Crawford with Andretti, who came in for his very first test and was second quickest and combined both sessions. I thought he did very well. The ones that you would say, look, if somebody did a bird and injured themselves, to come in and plug in and play and get straight on it, I think Zane Maloney would do that for Andretti. I thought Kush Maney, actually, for Mahindra, did a super job. The guy alongside him, Frederick Vesti, ex-Mercedes junior driver.
He's a man in search of a career direction, isn't he?
Yeah, and I think he may have found one last weekend. Again, he did a super job. And who else was there? Gabriele Mini for Nissan. He looked pretty good. Enzo Fittipaldi did really well for Jaguar. I think he was 5th or 6th quickest. I mean, there was a great spread actually. Some good stories up and down the paddock, including a friend of the site, Alice Powell, who was with Envision. Unfortunately, across the garage, Dries Vanthoor had an accident and damaged Robin Frines' car, which was quite ironic because actually Robin recommended Dries for that drive, but it happens. Sheldon van der Linde, who I think was 3rd quickest in the test overall for Jaguar, he did the same last year, but with not so much serious consequences. I think that chassis is on its way to Dallara to be patched up, which is unfortunate for the team. But just putting a big rock of salt into Envision's open wound of 2024, they just had an absolute shocker this year. So no signs of it getting better.
Formula E really pushing the boundaries of diversity and inclusion. There were half the grid was made up of up-and-coming, promising young female drivers?
We had Marta Garcia and we had Alice Powell. The big news, actually, is associated with this. 2 things. We've got Beth Peretta, who's joined, whose part of her role is to try and expand the diversity and inclusion of within the series. And we ran a story. Oh, sorry, we're running a story. I'm just trying to think when this thing's going to come out. Probably Thursday, isn't it? So, story today, if you look on the -race.com, is something that we broke, which is that there will be an all-female test in the Valencia pre-season running in November. It's not absolutely rubber stamped, but it's agreed by the teams, and that each team will have to run one female driver during an element of one of those days in Spain. So, which can only be a good thing. We need more. Quick.
So I was at Brands Hatch for the touring cars on the weekend, where Abby Pulling won that reverse top 12 Formula 4 race. So. Yeah. I hope she'd be one of those on that list. I think
you would have thought so. Bit of a no-brainer, that one.
Yeah, she's done a really solid job.
Alice Powell looks after her, I think, doesn't she? Does a lot of work with Abby Pulling. So, yeah, I mean, there's more than enough really good. I know quite well Sarah Bovey and Dorian Pain.
Obviously, incredibly impressive at Spa.
Yeah, massively. Yeah, took pole, and they got a bit compromised with the red flag in the race, and should have got more than the third place that they got in the end. But yeah, she's really impressive, Sarah Bovey. And then you've got
that first stint, she was just hammering the rest of them.
Yeah. And then you got Michelle Gatting as well, Mike's lass.
Let's hope she doesn't have to face any West Indian fast bowlers.
That's a little cricketing joke there for Alice Holloway, who's a big cricket fan. Mike's lass.
That's how niche we get in this. Right, well, talking of niche, go on then. I know you want to talk about it. How did you manage to cover 2 FIA World Championship races on the same weekend?
Yeah, I had to live this down actually when I got there, because stupidly posted a picture of it on Instagram. I got a plane. I got a really fancy plane. I believe they call them private jets in the business.
Was it an easy jet? Oh no.
Yeah, you might need to look at my salary, mate. Maybe that's a little.
I'm not signing that expensive. I'm telling you.
Yeah. Get the invoice from Boemi's invoice. Yeah, it was great. First time I've ever done that, and it was honestly, it was a completely logistical thing. It wasn't a sort of. This is
how long was that flight? It can't be much more than about 40 minutes.
It's like 50 minutes, I think, something like that. Yeah. But I mean, you do get used to. You could get very used to that.
How many glasses of champagne did you manage to consume in that time?
Well, the thing was, it was early in the morning. We were supposed to get it late on Saturday night, but Earl Bamber, who maybe I should invoice for the extra money for going on the Sunday, his red flag actually scuppered the plan, so we had to go Sunday morning, and it was me and a number of drivers, including the Envision guys, and Lotterer was there because he was doing the TV as well. And yeah, it was just very pleasant, just an easy thing to do, and you could get very used to that kind of method of transport if you had the money, of course, which I haven't. The most rock and roll thing that happened was me swiping some onboard Haribos. That's how crazy it got. Absolute hedonism. Yeah. Reckless, absolutely reckless. That's right. As wild as it got on a Sunday morning.
We're leaving your self-indulgence here. Right, any other business? So you mentioned Andretti, Porsche. We mentioned Bird's back. You've mentioned your female rookie test. So that leaves only one thing. Is there a calendar update?
Calendar update. There is a calendar update, and we're doing a piece on this. Well, I don't know. Should we do it? Because we're doing a piece on it next week. I won't give to. I'll tell you what. I'll go.
Just hint at it.
I'll go half. We'll do a half pint version of the calendar update. So the big question for next year's calendar really centres on when it's going to start. So Formula E want to start in December, but there has been complications. Really, part of it is that the FIA Gala is going to be on the 14th of December. I think we mentioned this, didn't we? Of course, you have to be at the FIA Gala to bow and curtsy. You're not the
world champion.
Yeah, get your posh napkins and all your pots and pans presented to you. But I'm told that might not be a complete deal breaker. The assumption is that Sao Paulo will start the season, but equally it could be a January start. There's still different variations or different iterations of the calendar that Formula E are working on to be submitted to the World Motorsport Council in a couple of weeks' time, and then it gets ratified in mid-June. We won't really know until we know in mid-June, but I sense that really it's either going to be a December start in Sao Paulo or potentially a January start maybe again in Mexico City or Mexico and Sao Paulo, doubleheader effectively, and then probably a Riyadh. I think in terms of where we're going to be racing in the States, there's going to be a bit of interesting detail on that. I tend to think that it could still be Portland. They could potentially do 2 races in the States, but I'm hearing I'm hearing Homestead, south of Miami, has been in talks. Where, of
course, back in season 1, we took a load of journalists to drive the car.
Indeed, yes, remember it well. Yeah. It's not the most glamorous of places.
And I think for the first time, Agag drove the car there. I think that was the first time he drove it.
Yeah, probably was. Remember Bob having a go. I mean, it doesn't feel like the kind of place Formula E should be going.
No, I'd say it wasn't a Formula E circuit at all. But there we go.
No, but
lovely weather.
I don't think a deal's done. Los Angeles, I think, sadly, is off the table for next season and possibly for the long term. They were talking extensively to them. Other cities that were mentioned to me, including by Jeff Dodds, Andrew, who mentioned a couple of cities.
Have you spoken to Jeff?
I had a chat with Jeff, yeah, which was nice. Little Jeff chat on the paddock. He mentioned several. I think it was more of a wish list than sort of, we are in detailed negotiations, but, he mentioned Denver, Atlanta was mentioned.
We'll have all sorts of dynasty puns if we go to Denver.
Indeed we shall. I'm trying to think if there's anything else. I mean, I honestly don't know. I don't feel as though there is a sort of long-term home available at the moment. They're talking to lots of different people, and they could happen. There's this I can't remember the name of the city in Thailand, but there's the potential of a Thai race. I think that Jakarta will be back because the deal is kind of done and there's no elections this year. That feels like it's going to happen. Shanghai will be back on the calendar for sure. Then a lot of the European structure is centred around Monaco and when that can happen.
Why don't we have a fantasy calendar chat alongside our driver market one? Let's maybe do that post Shanghai.
I think we should. And one day we'll get one of these things down below an hour, won't we? So that could be
don't hold your breath, listener. And thank you if you're still here. I know what we haven't mentioned. We had some fan mail.
Oh, we did. Yeah, I forgot. Have you got it there?
That was nice. Yeah, we loved it.
Yes, we did. It was from Mrs. Smith. That's my mum. No, it wasn't. Yeah. But here we go. Right, we need to shout out, don't we, to
we certainly do.
Lauren McManaman, who sent a really nice...
Thank you, Lauren.
Yes, a really nice message to us, saying how much she enjoyed the podcast. Oh, clearly she must be a bit unhinged, but thanks very much, Lauren, for your very nice.
I'd say she has shown that she has absolutely top tier taste,
exquisite taste.
And, absolutely,
it was very nice, and we both replied and said thank you very much. So a shout out to you, Lauren.
If she's at a race, you should make yourself known, and we'll come over and and be as annoying in person as we are on this pod.
Yeah, do that in London, Lauren. Come and say hello, and we'll show you what an absolute madhouse.
Yeah, I think I'm pretty sure I'll be at London for at least one, if not both, the races.
Super. Well, she should come and say hello personally there. So thanks very much again.
That sounds like a good point in which to end. So, I know what I was going to mention. No, don't. You were talking about Long Beach 83 there. If you're still listening and still into that sort of stuff, there's going to be something really interesting popping up on the race's YouTube channel in the next 2 weeks, I would say, that will really appeal to you if that's your sort of thing. I'll just leave it at that, but really exciting. And I had a really good meeting about it yesterday, so it's going to be happening soon. And on that note...
It's not Jean-Pierre Jarier top 10 biggest shunts or something, is it? Like that? Is
you're in the ballpark.
He was leading that race for a lap. He led that race for a lap in a Ligier and then put it in the wall.
It's one of those great races, and there's just cars all littered around the side of the circuit by the end of it. There must be 15 broken down cars. It's just like, it was different back then.
Those were the days.
Those were the days. And on that note, thank you very much for listening. Goodbye.
The Athletic.